Hi, I'm Amina Wasuma, and I'm here to talk about my novel, Amberstone Agent Zero, Episode 19, The Libyan Gathering. Now, the last time we left off, Imani and Heleema had changed their identity, cut their hair, dyed it blonde, and they were leaving uh, for Libya to take Habid's diary to his friend Muhammed Akbar. Also, they want to know where Rhadejah is because she's in Libya and they want to, stay with her because she has all the money and the wealth. And maybe she wants to adopt two teenage girls. I don't know. We have to wait and see what happens when they get there. So they leave and they're packing an AK-47. They have rifles in the back of the trunk. They have water, food, everything for their journey. It's like a kind of large Jeep that they're driving. So they head out and they cross the Sahara Desert. Actually, they're driving because they have to drive from Libya to Iraq. On the way there is a blockage. Again, sex traffickers are stopping whoever's coming along that part of the desert because Libya is known for sex trafficking and sex slaves. And it's just like, wow, these girls can't believe it. So Imani says, well, what are we going to do? They got us almost like surrounded. It's the way they have the blockade in the desert. You have several cars and they have to, they can't go around the other way. They have to go through them. So Heleema says, well, if I keep driving, just like bust through the blockade, I'm going to damage the car. So what we'll do, we'll stop. And we get out. No questions asked. Just start shooting. And then jump back in the Jeep. Better yet, let's not get out. Let's just stop the car and just start shooting. And once we just blow them away, we drive on through. So Imani said, yeah, but the car is going to be damaged because their car is blocking. So Heleema says, well, I don't want to drive through there because I'm well aware that the car will be damaged. But come to think of it, we have no other choice. Again, they see the blockade, that's way ahead of them. And so they ease up and, the sex trafficker stopped the car, waves his hands like stop the car. So they stop and he's coming toward them. And Imani just sticks the gun through the windshield. There's no windshield, just sticks the gun through the window and starts firing. Shoots him, and Heleema just puts her foot on the gas and zooms through, hits the car, knocks it aside, and keeps driving. She drives right on through. And they're shooting the other men at them, and they're ducking, and she's driving so fast. She's driving like 90 miles an hour, outrunning the bullets. So they finally get to Libya in one piece. And so Imani is like, okay, we got to find this address, where Muhammad Akbar lives. And so Heleema says, well, what if he's like Rasheed? So Imani says, you know what? I'm not going to ever let that happen to me again or to you. I'm going to kill him. And Heleema looks at her in shock. You? Somebody who never wanted to take a life before? My, you have changed. I says, I will kill him if he puts his hands on you or I. So Heleema says, okay, I get it. So they find Muhammad Akbar's house. They park the car, they get out, they knock on the door. Bam, bam, bam. And they hear a voice from the other side. Who is it? And she says, it's Heleema and Emani, Habid's daughters. Is this Muhammad Akbar? So he opens the door. He's like a slimy kind of looking kind of guy, sleazy, not, yeah, kind of sleazy. And he says, well, if you're knocking on my door, say, yeah, we're his daughters, and he wanted us to bring his diary to you. So he says, well, okay. And he must be dead then. And they said, yeah. He said, because that's the only way that I would get his diary. So he says, come in, come in. So they come in. He's got books all over, and it's dusty and everything. And so Imani says, you really like books? He says, oh, yes, I'm a writer, I'm a courier for my organization, but I'm a writer. And so he says, give me the diary. So Heleema gives him the diary. It's locked, and he has to take his knife and open it. And he looks, he skims through it, and he sees a lot of pages are missing. So he said, what happened to the rest of the diary? So Heleema said, well, obviously Habid couldn't finish the rest because he got killed. It was an accident. IED exploded on him. So he says, well, so what do I do about the missing pieces? So Heleema says, well, I'll make a deal with you. We're looking for Rhadejah. That's it. And he says, yeah, I work for her. That's strange, I work for her. And so Imani says, well, we need to go and see her because we have nowhere else to go. And, she told us that if we ever needed to visit her, we could. So he says, okay. So Heleema says, well, I'll make a deal with you. I will write the rest of the diary in exchange for you taking us to Rhadejah. And so he looks at them. He says, okay. He says, when are you going to write it? She said, I can write the rest tonight. I know the story. And I can write the missing pages, plus our journey that we had. I can write it all tonight. It's no more than like 50 pages. So he says, okay. So you have some place for us to sleep? He says, yes, you can sleep in the guest room. And he takes them to a room, and there's 2 beds in there. And he says, well, are you hungry? And he says, no, we ate already. We're not hungry. So he says, okay. So he gives them the diary, gives Heleema the diary. And so he says, well, how soon do you want to go to Rhadejah? She says, right away in the morning. I'll have the diary finished and you can take us. So he closes the door and leaves the two girls alone. So Emani's like, you think he's going to come in the middle of the night? And Heleema says, I don't know. I'm going to be up writing. I'm certainly not going to be sleeping. So you sleep and I'll be up writing. And he comes in, you hear me yell, and you take action. I says, okay. So Heleema starts writing, nightfall comes, Emani goes to sleep. Heleema's writing. She writes to the wee hours in the morning. Finally, she goes to sleep. And it's about like 9, 10, 11, around that time. Muhammed Akbar knocks on the door. And so they awake. Emani awakes, actually. Heleema's still asleep. And she answers the door. And he says, oh, are you ready to go to Rhadejah's? And Emani said, well, Heleema's asleep. I'll wake her up and we'll be ready in about an hour. He said, would you like to have some breakfast? I said, no, we don't want any breakfast. We want to get there as fast as we can and as soon as we can. So he says, okay. So he closes the door and she wakes up Heleema and they get dressed and they meet Muhammed Akbar in the living room. And so he says, you got the diary? Finished it? And Heleema said, yeah, I stayed up half of the night and I finished it. And she gives it to him. So now you're going to keep your end of the bargain and take us to Rhadejah. He said, sure. And he gets on the stool and he puts the diary up in the ceiling. So he said, this is a safe place where no one will find it. So he and the girls get in his car and drive to Ty's complex. When he comes to a certain part in the Libyan desert, there's a force field. And there's a guard standing in front of the force field. He recognizes him. And so he, on the walkie-talkie, he puts the code in, and the force field opens. And when the force field opens, Muhammed Akbar and the girls drive through, and then a door opens in the ground, lifts, almost like revealing an underground garage. It lifts up, it's covered with sand, and he drives down underground. At least it's about like, maybe 50 feet or 100 feet. But he drives down and he gets to the bottom, parks the car, and they take an elevator upstairs, and the doors open and there's a big, beautiful party going on. All the Thai agents are there. So Muhammed Akbar comes in, and there is Rhadejah. And Emani and Heleema greet her. And they're so happy that they found her. They're like talking over each other. one at a time. She's like saying, so Emani said, I'm so glad we found you. You know, our father is dead. We don't have anywhere else to go. Uh, would you take us in? And she said, sure. Why not? And they didn't tell her that Rasheed raped them and that she had a baby. They didn't tell her any of that. They just was so happy to be, you know, in this luxurious Lair. They didn't want to spoil it. So Emani says, you know, my mother was killed. You know, my father was killed. And we have nowhere else to go. And Rhadejah tells them, do not call me Rhadejah anymore. My name is Queen Lair. And you're going to forget about the past. And you're going to be inducted as a Thai agent. And I'm going to rename you Agent 1 is Heleema. And Agent 2 is Emani. And let me introduce you to the key players in our game. So she takes them over to the table. Actually, Bacchus takes them over. She tells Bacchus, take them over to the table. Let them meet, you know, the gang. And so they go over to the table, and Muhammed Akbar follows. And they meet Cindy Beauty and Ace, Eddie and Hyena, Meg, who's an android. And Emani's like, what is an android? And Meg is like, well, it's a AI humanoid robot. And they sit down at the table and they meet the Queen of Clubs. And she's with her man, Joe. So the only one that doesn't have a boyfriend is Meg. They haven't made a male android as of yet. And so they welcome them, and she says, well, this is Agent 1 and Agent 2. Muhammed Akbar introduces them. And they're just thrilled to be there. They don't know that there's an initiation that has to be done. And they don't know anything. They're just like, I'm so happy to be in this luxurious place. They're not thinking about what they have to do to stay there. They're not thinking about, you know, what's going to happen to them, what their future is going to be like. You know, what kind of work are they going to be doing? You know, they're not even thinking. All they know is that Rhadejah, who is now Queen Lair, is the head of the Daughters of Allah. And this is their new life. So, what's going to happen? You know, they've gotten there by the skin of their teeth. They trusted Muhammed Akbar. And now he wants to write the story, you know, and he wants to add their story to Queen Lair's manifesto. Because the story is about terrorist incorporated extortionists. And he wants to write it. And now he wants to add Emani and Heleema to the story. He has Habid's diary. Anyway, Hyena is there. And she's there with her boyfriend, Eddie. Now, her name is Karen Williams, and she wants all the attention. It's not her night, but she's like, oh, I'm the center of attention here, and, it's all about me. So, Muhammed Akbar is like, put in a good word with Queen Nair, so I can be the writer. Because they haven't decided who's going to be the writer of this manifesto. Are they going to hire somebody? Because he's just a courier who wants to be a writer. He wants to write the novel. So he's telling Hyena, put a good word in for me. Make sure that she doesn't get someone else, on the black market to write this novel. I want to get, rich and famous as a writer. And Hyena says, well, okay. I'll talk to her when I go in to meet with her. And, put a good word in for you. But first, let me see if you're qualified. And he's like, I know your story. I know everyone's story like the back of my hand. I have a photogenic memory. And so Hyena says, well, tell us my story. And he begins to tell Karen Williams, a.k.a. Hyena, story. So tune in for episode 20, Karen Williams. Now we'll see what her story is about. Is it as bad as Emani's and Heleema? Is she a deserving member of Thai? What was her initiation? How did she happen to become a member? So all of this will be revealed in episode 20.